I'm Emma Carter, a 27-year-old who, until last year, was just another marketing assistant in the vibrant city of Asheville. I held on to a dream that seemed out of reach, owning a home on a modest income. When I unexpectedly found a tax auction listing for a house priced at a mere $900, it seemed like fate was finally on my side. However, the shock came from my family's reaction when I chose this opportunity over financing my sister Sophie's transformative yoga retreat in Costa Rica. My mother's piercing gaze still lingers in my memory as she hurled the words, "Then live like junk. You've shamed this family." Before I share how I transformed the worst day of my life into a triumph, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button. Have you ever been caught between your dreams and family expectations? Growing up in our middle-class Asheville neighborhood, we had an unspoken family hierarchy that was never openly discussed. My sister Sophie, 2 years my junior at 25, was always the favored one, artistic, effortlessly charming, and constantly diving into new passions our parents, James and Linda Carter, eagerly supported. Meanwhile, I was the responsible one, the steady anchor to Sophie's brilliant but unpredictable energy. This dynamic wasn't born from malice or intentional favoritism, but from countless small moments that collectively defined our family story. When Sophie needed new dance shoes, I would wait for my new sneakers until the next month. When she struggled with math and needed extra tutoring, I taught myself from the textbook. The expectation that I would accommodate, adapt, and make room for my sister's needs was ingrained in our family dynamic from my earliest memories. I recall my 10th birthday when my parents had to leave early to take Sophie to an important audition. They promised we'd celebrate properly the following weekend, but once again, something came up. By high school, this pattern was deeply rooted, with my achievements, class president, honor roll, yearbook editor, receiving quick congratulations, while Sophie's smallest artistic endeavors were celebrated with dinner parties and framed displays. The real test came during college applications. Despite my higher GPA and multiple scholarship offers, my parents chose to redirect part of my college fund to help Sophie attend an exclusive art school that had only offered her partial funding. "You're so smart, you'll figure it out," my mother had said. And I did, working 20 hours a week at a campus bookstore while maintaining my academic standing, graduating with student loans that I'm still paying off. After college, I landed a position at a marketing firm in Asheville, moved into a shared apartment with 2 roommates to save money, and built a life independent of my family's Sophie-centric activities. I kept strict control over my finances, bringing lunch from home, buying clothes secondhand, using public transportation, all to save toward my dream of owning a home. My promotion 6 months ago to senior marketing assistant came with a modest salary increase that, for the first time, gave me breathing room and sped up my savings plan. Meanwhile, Sophie had cycled through several career starts: fashion, design, photography, interior decorating, each beginning with enthusiasm and parental investment. Every time, the moment when the hard reality of disciplined effort overshadowed the initial burst of creativity. My sister was unaware, kept in the dark by my parents who had meticulously shielded her from the truth. Their financial situation was becoming increasingly unstable. During an uncommon lunch with just my father, he had reluctantly revealed that their retirement savings had been significantly drained, and they had resorted to taking out a second mortgage on our family home. "Please don't bring this up with your sister or mother," he urged quickly. "We'll manage somehow." I nodded, understanding that protecting Sophie's illusion of stability was our family's unwritten rule. The trigger for everything that unfolded was a Sunday dinner at my parents' house 3 months back. Sophie arrived last, practically quivering with excitement, holding her news until dessert. "I've been accepted into the Sacred Path Yoga Teacher Training Retreat in Costa Rica," she announced, pulling out shiny brochures from her bag. "It's a 6-week intensive course that will completely transform my practice and grant me certification to start teaching." My parents exchanged looks of uncertainty as I mentally calculated the expenses. International flights, 6 weeks of accommodation in Costa Rica, course fees, easily amounting to $3,500, possibly more. Unaware of the growing tension, Sophie continued. It begins in just 5 weeks, which is perfect for my transition from the boutique. She had been working part-time at a high-end clothing store for roughly 4 months, the longest job she'd held so far. My father cleared his throat. That sounds wonderful, sweetheart, but it's quite an investment. Have you considered the costs involved? Sophie's enthusiasm dimmed slightly before she regained her composure. I've saved a bit, and I thought maybe we could see this as a family investment in my future career. Once certified, I can start teaching immediately. The glance my parents shared was fleeting but full of unspoken words. Then, predictably, 3 pairs of eyes turned toward me. My mother was the first to speak, her tone casual yet deliberate. Emma, didn't you mention a recent raise? Family supports one another, and this sounds like an incredible opportunity for your sister. The familiar burden of expectations settled on my shoulders, but this time something was different. Perhaps it was knowing the financial difficulties my parents were concealing from Sophie, or maybe it was the nearly $40,000 I had painstakingly saved over years, now tantalizingly close to being a down payment on a modest house. Whatever the reason, instead of my usual agreeable nod, I heard myself say, "Let me think about it," which, within our family dynamics, was nearly a declaration of rebellion. The Asheville housing market had been a constant source of frustration for me, with even the smallest condos in marginally safe areas starting well beyond what my careful budget could handle. I had been scouring listings nightly for months, watching as properties were swiftly sold, often for 10 to 15% above the asking price. My rental situation was also becoming increasingly precarious. Both of my roommates had recently announced plans to move in with their partners, leaving me to either find new roommates or somehow afford the 2-bedroom apartment on my own. The discovery that altered everything occurred entirely by chance, 3 days after the family dinner, where Sophie shared her retreat plans. My colleague, Ethan, was diving deep into research on tax auctions for a marketing client specializing in property investments, and I was assisting him in organizing the data for an upcoming presentation. Check this out, Ethan exclaimed, gesturing at his screen. A starting bid of $900 for an entire house? That has to be a mistake. I leaned in to examine the listing. It was a quaint, cottage-style home from the 1920s located in the Westview neighborhood. The images showed a clearly deserted property with boarded-up windows, an overgrown yard, and obvious exterior damage, yet there was a hint of charm beneath the neglect. Perhaps there's a lien on it or major structural problems. Repairs could cost tens of thousands, Ethan chuckled. Yet something about the house sparked my curiosity. During my lunch break, I found myself delving into the property's history, learning it had been unoccupied for over 15 years after a tax default. The auction was set for the upcoming Saturday, just 3 days away. After work, I drove to the area to see the property from the outside. The street exceeded my expectations. It was a blend of well-preserved older homes and some in various stages of renovation, indicating a neighborhood on the rise. As I stood gazing at the dilapidated cottage, an elderly Asian man emerged from the house next door. "Are you interested in the Thompson place?" he inquired. I introduced myself, and he said he was Mr. Lin, a resident of the neighborhood for 30 years. "It's a sad tale," he remarked, shaking his head. "The Thompsons, an elderly couple, both passed away within months of each other. Their son was supposed to inherit it, but he had his issues. Addiction, I believe. He never claimed the house, and it's been vacant ever since. It was once a beautiful home. Such a pity." Motivated by our conversation, I spent the evening researching renovation costs, zoning laws, and property values in the vicinity. The following day, I called Ben Lopez, a contractor friend from college, known for budget renovations, to discuss the property. Honestly, it might be a financial drain for most people, he said after reviewing the listing I sent him. But for someone ready to live there, while gradually fixing it up and do some of the work themselves, it could indeed be a hidden gem. The location alone makes it worth considering if the price is truly that low. Over the next 2 days, I weighed costs, risks, and potential. The morning before the auction, Sophie called. "Have you thought about our dinner conversation?" she asked abruptly. "About the retreat funding? I need to secure my spot with a deposit by next week." Her assumption that I would contribute without acknowledging what she was asking me to give up clarified things for me. "I'll let you know tomorrow," I said, making up my mind right then. The auction took place in a dull conference room at the county administrative building. I arrived an hour early, clutching a cashier's check for $1,000, the highest I was willing to bid, including fees. To my astonishment, only 3 others were there, and 2 seemed to be together. When the Thompson property was announced, I lifted my bidder card for the minimum $900 bid, my heart racing. The couple had a brief discussion, but didn't bid again. Going once, going twice, sold. Suddenly, against all odds, I became a homeowner for less than the price of a second-hand laptop. The rush of euphoria hit me like a tidal wave as soon as I finished signing the papers and held the certificate of sale in my hands. In a haze of emotions, I drove straight to the property that was now mine and stood on the cracked sidewalk, absorbing the sight of the worn-down cottage. A blend of joy and fear ran through me. What had I gotten myself into? How would I break this to my family? The thought of my parents' potential reaction, especially given Sophie's retreat plans, made my excitement waver with nervousness. Yet, as I peeked through a slit in the boarded-up windows at the dusty chaos inside, a wave of determination washed over me. This was mine, the first thing that was truly and completely mine, and I was determined to make it work somehow. Standing on the sidewalk, I called my best friend Mia, struggling to string together coherent words in my excitement. "You did what?" she exclaimed, her voice a mix of shock and admiration. $900? In Asheville? That's not even enough for a month's rent in a closet. I described the house's condition, the risks involved, and my tentative plans for renovation. Mia switched between warning me of potential catastrophes and applauding my daring move. "What did your family say?" she eventually asked, hitting the nerve I was trying to avoid. "I haven't told them yet," I confessed. "With Sophie's retreat situation looming over us, it's complicated." Mia's silence spoke volumes. She had seen enough of my family dynamics over our decade-long friendship to grasp the implications. "Want me to be there when you tell them?" she offered. I declined, but promised to update her afterward, no matter the outcome. That evening, a text from my mother arrived. "Dinner tomorrow at 6. Sophie has exciting updates about her retreat. Don't be late." The timing seemed orchestrated by the universe for maximum drama, but maybe it was for the best. To lay everything bare at once. I spent a restless night toggling between watching YouTube tutorials on basic home repairs and practicing how to deliver my news to the family. When I pulled up to my parents' house the next evening, Sophie's car was already parked in the driveway beside an unfamiliar vehicle. It turned out to belong to her new boyfriend, Noah, a yoga instructor she had been seeing for 3 weeks. Inside, my mother was setting the table with the good china, a sign that this dinner was a special occasion. "There she is," Sophie called as I walked in, rushing over to embrace me with unusual enthusiasm. "I have so much to share with you." During the appetizer course, featuring my mother's special crab cakes, Sophie monopolized the conversation with stories about her retreat, the renowned yoga instructors who would be present, and the networking opportunities awaiting her. Noah, a lanky man with a constant, peaceful smile, nodded wisely at everything she said, occasionally throwing in yoga terminology I didn't comprehend. As my mother served the main course, Sophie finally reached into her bag and pulled out several printed sheets. "So, I figured out everything financially," she declared, sliding papers toward our parents and me. I glanced down to see a detailed breakdown of expenses, totaling $3,800, more than I had anticipated, with a pie chart illustrating expected contributions. My portion was listed as $2,000, more than half the NDK. Total cost. "I understand it's overwhelming," Sophie went on, misreading my stunned look. "However, I've already allocated $500 from my own savings, and our parents are taking care of the flight and a bit of spending money. Your contribution would be for the actual retreat fee." She looked at me with hopeful eyes, while our parents focused intently on their meals. "This is a fantastic opportunity, Emma." My father finally spoke up. "Your sister has discovered her passion, and we as a family need to support each other." The silence between us grew as I prepared my reply, aware that my words could change our family forever. "I can't contribute to the retreat," I finally said, my voice steadier than I anticipated. "I've made a major financial commitment myself." 4 pairs of eyes turned to me with varying levels of confusion and doubt. My mother put her fork down. "What kind of commitment?" she asked cautiously. "I bought a house," I said, letting the words linger before adding, "yesterday, at an auction." Sophie chuckled, clearly thinking I was joking. "No, really, what is going on?" My father leaned in. "Emma, what are you talking about? You don't have enough saved for a down payment yet." "It was a tax auction property," I explained, showing photos on my phone. "The winning bid was $900. I handed my phone to my father, watching as his expression shifted from confusion to disbelief as he flipped through images of the rundown cottage. "This is unlivable," he finally said. My mother took the phone, her lips tightening as she looked at the pictures. "You spent money on this? This trash? Instead of helping your sister?" Sophie grabbed the phone, her earlier excitement vanishing as she looked through the images. "This has to be a joke, right? You didn't seriously choose this over my retreat." I attempted to explain my reasoning, the opportunity the property presented, the financial calculations I'd made, my discussions with the contractor. But with each word, the room's atmosphere grew more tense. "Do you realize what you've done?" my mother interrupted. "Your sister has a real shot at building a career, at finding her direction, and you've thrown it away on a wreck." Noah, looking uneasy, muttered something about negative energy and left for the living room. "I've been saving for years," I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay composed. "This is my chance to create something for myself instead of always putting everyone else first." My father shook his head, disappointment marking every feature. "This isn't about putting yourself first, Emma. It's about making wise choices versus reckless ones. That house will drain every penny you have and still be worthless." Sophie pushed away from the table, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You've ruined everything," she sobbed. "The deposit is due next week, and without your share, I can't go. Do you know how hard it was to get accepted?" This was my one opportunity. The argument intensified, our voices rising until the neighbors could probably hear through the open dining room windows. My mother followed Sophie to console her, while my father and I continued our increasingly heated debate in the dining room. "You've always been the responsible one," he said, his voice laden with disappointment. "I never thought you'd do something so impulsive and selfish." When my mother returned, her face was flushed with anger. Well, I hope you're satisfied with your decision. Your sister is utterly heartbroken. I stood up, collecting my belongings, aware that any meaningful discussion was impossible now. I feel for Sophie's distress, but this is crucial for me. I believe it's best if I leave. As I moved towards the exit, my mother's voice cut through the air, halting me abruptly. Then go reside in your cluttered house if that's what you hold dear. You've brought disgrace to this family with your egocentric behavior. My father didn't oppose her words. His silence was a tacit agreement with her harsh judgment. Do not return until you've straightened out your priorities, my mother added as I stepped onto the porch. The door slammed shut behind me before I could utter a word. I stood there for an extended moment, the weight of their rejection heavy on my chest, making it hard to breathe. Slowly, I made my way to my car and drove away from the only family I had ever known. Mia's one-bedroom flat turned into my temporary refuge for the following week, as the reality of my situation began to sink in. Stay as long as you need, she insisted, arranging the sofa with extra blankets and clearing out a drawer for my clothes. During the day, I went through the motions at work, deflecting curious questions about my distracted demeanor with vague mentions of family troubles, while spending lunch breaks making calls about utilities and researching the permits I would need. Evenings were shared with Mia, alternating between planning sessions with a notebook and calculator, and emotional breakdowns that left me questioning every decision that had led me here. A week after the auction, I finally mustered the courage to visit the house. My house, using the keys I had received from the county clerk's office. The reality of my purchase was more jarring in daylight than it had been in the auction photos. The front porch leaned dangerously to one side. The yard was overrun with weeds and scattered debris, and the interior, once I managed to pry a board from a window to look inside, was worse than I had feared. Decades of neglect had resulted in water damage on the ceilings, floors warped in several spots, and signs of various unwelcome animal visitors throughout. Standing in what I assumed was once the living room, the enormity of what I had taken on crashed over me like a physical wave. I collapsed onto the floor, indifferent to the dust and grime, surrendering to panic and tears. That night, back on Mia's couch, I received the first of many text messages from Sophie. Thanks for ruining my future. Hope your pile of trash was worth it. I couldn't bring myself to reply, instead staring at the ceiling until the first light of dawn seeped through the curtains. My parents maintained a silence that spoke volumes. No calls, no texts, no acknowledgement of my existence. In some ways, their absence hurt more than Sophie's anger. I had always been the dependable one, the daughter they could rely on, and now I had been cut out of their lives with alarming ease. The next day, a Saturday, I received an unexpected call from my Uncle Tom, my father's younger brother, who resided in Charlotte. "Your dad mentioned your situation," he said, after brief pleasantries. "I wanted to check in." I braced myself for another lecture, but was taken aback when he continued. "You know, I experienced something similar with your grandparents when I chose to open my bike shop instead of joining the family accounting firm. Sometimes you have to make decisions that disappoint those you love in order to create the life you need." His realization led to fresh tears, but also ignited a small flicker of hope that, perhaps in time, my family might come to understand. Monday ushered in the additional strain of returning to work for the entire week, facing colleagues oblivious to the fact that my life had unraveled. "How was your weekend?" my cubicle neighbor inquired brightly. "Did you do anything enjoyable?" I mumbled something about home projects and hurried to the bathroom to gather myself. The financial reality of my situation was becoming increasingly daunting with each passing day. After work, Ben, the contractor, accompanied me to the house and delivered the sobering news that the electrical system needed a complete overhaul before the house could be safely lived in, a task that would cost nearly $4,000, far more than I had anticipated for initial repairs. "The structure is actually better than it appears," he offered as consolation. "Good bones, as they say, but there's a lot of work ahead." That night, discovering a family photo tucked in my wallet while searching for a receipt, I broke down completely. Mia held me as I sobbed, releasing all the pain, doubt, and fear that had been accumulating. "Maybe they're right," I choked out between tears. "Maybe this was a monumental mistake. I've lost my family over a worthless house I can't even afford to repair." Mia let me cry myself out before speaking. "Listen to me, Emma. You chose to invest in yourself after a lifetime of putting others first. That's not a mistake. That's growth. It's frightening and it's difficult, but it's not wrong." Her words didn't immediately erase my doubts, but they gave me enough strength to face the next day and the one after that. And gradually, almost imperceptibly, those days began to construct a new version of my life, one I had never envisioned, but one that increasingly felt like it might become something genuine and worthwhile, even if the journey was littered with more obstacles than I had anticipated. With the reluctant blessing of my landlord by proxy, I began the process of moving my essential belongings into the house, focusing on making a single room, the small former dining room with the least amount of visible damage, temporarily livable. I scrubbed every surface, sealed a small crack in the window with clear packing tape, and set up an air mattress, a lamp connected to an extension cord running to a neighbor's outlet with permission and payment arranged, and a plastic storage bin for my clothes. The first night alone in the house was a test of courage. I nearly faltered. Every creak and groan of the old structure startled me awake, and the unfamiliar shadows cast by streetlights through the partially boarded windows created monstrous shapes on the walls. At 3 a.m, a sudden scurrying sound sent me bolt upright, heart pounding, until I identified the source as likely a squirrel on the roof, rather than the axe murderer my imagination had conjured. By dawn, I was exhausted, but oddly triumphant. I had survived my first night as a homeowner, however uncomfortable. The second day brought an unexpected encounter that would begin to reshape my experience. While attempting to clear some of the front yard debris in the early evening after work, I noticed an elderly woman watching me from the sidewalk, leaning heavily on a cane. "Are you the new owner?" she called out. I approached, introduced myself, and learned she was Mrs. Thompson, no relation to the former owners, who lived 3 houses down. "I've often pondered when someone might take the plunge with this old house," she remarked, casting a glance at my feeble attempts to tame the wild garden. "My dear Arthur always lamented how unfortunate it was to see the place languish." Before departing, she left me with words that would echo in my mind during the days of I that lay ahead. "Tomorrow, I'm whipping up some beef stew. I invariably prepare more than enough. I'll drop some by." True to her promise, Mrs. Thompson showed up the next evening with a container of still warm stew and a packet detailing the neighborhood's history, which she believed would pique my interest. This marked my initiation into a community I never realized existed during my years of living in apartments. Within a few days, I had encountered more neighbors. The Lynn family next door kindly offered the use of their garden hose and outdoor tap until my water service was set up. Liam, a 16-year-old from across the street, proposed to help clear the yard for a modest fee. Then there were the Parkers, a couple in their 30s, renovating a similar, though less run-down house 2 blocks away, eagerly sharing their experiences and tips on discount suppliers. The overwhelming sense of isolation that had enveloped me since the falling out with my family began to dissipate, replaced by a tentative connection to this unexpected community. Meanwhile, I immersed myself in learning basic home repair skills. My lunch breaks were filled with watching instructional videos while evenings after work were dedicated to hands-on practice. I became a frequent visitor to the local library, borrowing books on everything from basic plumbing to identifying load-bearing walls. My first major triumph came when I successfully repaired the broken front porch steps, using salvaged wood from the backyard shed and techniques learned from a YouTube series. The confidence gained from that small victory fueled my resolve to tackle increasingly complex projects. 3 weeks into owning the house, Ben, a contractor friend, showed up unannounced on a Saturday morning. "I brought reinforcements," he said, gesturing to his truck where 2 of his crew members waited. "We've got a cancellation today, and I thought we might tackle some of that electrical work at a friend's rate." Even the friend's rate was a stretch for my budget, but with their help, the main electrical panel was replaced, and the most critical wiring issues addressed in a single, intense day of work, bringing the house significantly closer to being legally habitable. While removing damaged drywall to access wiring, we stumbled upon an unexpected bonus. Behind decades of cheaply installed wall coverings lay the original hardwood wainscoting in remarkably good condition. "That's the beauty of these old houses," Ben observed, examining the find. "Sometimes the unsightly renovations actually preserve the treasures beneath." This pattern continued as work progressed. Linoleum was peeled back to reveal original hardwood floors, a false ceiling removed to expose beautiful crown molding, and, most spectacularly, a small stained glass window discovered in the attic, likely removed from the front door decades ago during a security upgrade and forgotten. Each discovery felt like the house itself was unveiling its potential, rewarding my faith and persistence with tangible proof that my impulsive purchase might not have been so misguided after all. I established a grueling yet productive routine: work during the day, renovate for 4 to 5 hours each evening, collapse into exhausted sleep, and repeat. Weekends were fully committed to working on the house, with the frequent help of my newfound friends from the neighborhood, who volunteered their time. Progress was slow, yet there was a consistent forward movement as one room turned livable, followed by another. The bathroom, though far from beautiful, became usable, and the kitchen reached a level of safety suitable for simple cooking tasks. My body was in constant pain from the unfamiliar physical work, my hands rough and often wrapped in bandages due to minor injuries, and I lived in a state of near constant exhaustion. Yet strangely, I felt more alive and driven than I had in a very long time, perhaps ever. Each small triumph, whether it was painting a wall, replacing a fixture, or clearing a room of debris, brought a sense of fulfillment that was unlike anything I had known in my previously well-organized life. "You seem different," Mia noted during one of our weekly dinners, typically held at budget-friendly restaurants due to my tight finances. "You look tired, for sure, but there's something more grounded about you." I got what she was saying. Despite the financial strain, the physical hurdles, and the persistent heartache from being distanced from my family, I was evolving into a new person. Someone who confronted issues head-on, who learned from her mistakes, and who constructed something real with her own hands. This new version of myself, slowly coming to life through dust, sweat, and the occasional tear, felt increasingly like someone I could take pride in, regardless of whether my family ever acknowledged it. 6 weeks after buying the house, I got an unexpected call from my cousin Lila, Uncle Tom's daughter. After some awkward small talk, she hesitantly revealed information that felt like a punch to the gut. My parents had drained a large portion of their retirement savings to pay for Sophie's retreat, which she was currently attending in Costa Rica. "I thought you should know," Lila said awkwardly. "Aunt Linda has been telling everyone that you refuse to help, even though you have the money. And now they're in financial trouble because of it." Learning that my parents had risked their future for Sophie's wishes while criticizing my decisions stirred a complex mix of emotions: validation that my worries about their finances were justified, hurt that they would sacrifice so much for one daughter while rejecting the other, and genuine concern for their long-term security. What ensued was a wave of family gossip that reached me through various channels. Relatives reaching out with concern. Old family friends mentioning things they'd heard. Even a former high school classmate whose mother played bridge with my aunt. The story being spread depicted me as selfish, and my house as something resembling a drug den or a death trap, with each retelling adding more dramatic details. Attempts to set the record straight were met with skepticism or polite indifference, as the original story seemed more entertaining than the truth. I tried to concentrate on the progress with the house, rather than the pain of these betrayals, but the stress inevitably seeped into other parts of my life. At work, my performance noticeably declined. Twice, I missed morning meetings after staying up until 3 a.m., working on crucial plumbing repairs, and my usually precise marketing reports contained unusual errors. My boss, Karen, called me into her office after I nodded off during a client presentation. "I can't figure out what's happening with you," she remarked. "But this isn't the Emma I brought on board. Treat this as a formal caution." I vowed to make changes, aware as I spoke that my impossible schedule was bound to collapse sooner or later. Meanwhile, Sophie had started sharing daily posts from her retreat, featuring beachfront yoga routines and cheerful snapshots with her newfound soul family, accompanied by philosophical reflections on letting go of negativity, which felt particularly pointed given the circumstances. Each post was met with enthusiastic comments from my parents, their support for her starkly contrasting with their persistent silence toward me. My numerous attempts to reconnect, through carefully crafted messages, voicemails, and even a handwritten note, were met with silence, except for a brief response from my father. "We need time. Please respect that." As Thanksgiving approached, it painfully dawned on me that for the first time ever, I wouldn't be spending it with family. Mia extended an invitation to her family's gathering, but an unexpected pipe leak in the kitchen demanded immediate attention, leaving me alone with a microwave dinner on the holiday. Sitting on my newly sanded yet unfinished floors, eating turkey and instant mashed potatoes from a plastic tray, I indulged in an hour of self-pity before resuming the pipe repairs. The following week, the crisis I had feared unfolded. A company-wide email announced restructuring due to lost clients, followed by a private meeting where Karen regretfully informed me that my role was being eliminated. "Your performance issues didn't help," she acknowledged. "But honestly, this would have occurred regardless. We've lost the Westridge account, and marketing is facing the biggest cuts." I was presented with a modest severance package, 2 weeks' salary plus accumulated vacation time, and instructed to clear out my desk by day's end. The timing couldn't have been worse. The electrical work had drained most of my remaining savings, and the ongoing material costs for essential repairs persisted, irrespective of my employment status. I had anticipated at least another month of income before the house would be ready for inspection for permanent utilities, a necessity before I could consider it truly livable, rather than just camping in a construction zone. The job market in Asheville was fiercely competitive, even for candidates who were currently employed with up-to-date references. As an unemployed applicant with a recent performance warning, my prospects appeared grim. I immersed myself in an intense job search, applying for roles I was overqualified for alongside ambitious opportunities that would typically be a step up. Concurrently, I sped up work on the house, realizing that completing enough repairs to make it officially habitable would eliminate my largest ongoing expense: rent. I continued contributing to Mia, despite primarily residing at what was essentially the house. Days blurred into an exhausting cycle of online job applications, interviews that led nowhere, and increasingly frantic renovation efforts. My severance quickly ran out, followed by my emergency fund. I began selling non-essential belongings to purchase construction materials, each trip to the hardware store turning into an exercise in painful prioritization. The breaking point arrived during an early December rainstorm, when a section of patched roof gave way, sending water cascading into what I had hoped would be my finished bedroom within weeks. As the clock struck midnight, I found myself in the center of the dimly lit room, desperately arranging buckets and pots to catch the relentless drips from the ceiling. My clothes clung to my skin, soaked through, and I shivered uncontrollably in the chill of the unheated house. It was in this moment of chaos that I was forced to face a harsh reality. My parents and sister might have been right all along. Had I truly wrecked my family ties, thrown my career off course, and drained my savings for a dream that was slipping through my fingers? For the first time since buying this house, the idea of giving up crossed my mind. I contemplated walking away from this property, accepting financial ruin, and trying to rebuild my life from the fragments that remained. The thought was as clear as it was terrifying. I had made a monumental error, with no clear path forward that didn't involve acknowledging my failure. I collapsed onto the damp floor, surrounded by the persistent sound of water dripping and the wind howling outside. It was then that I allowed myself to fully experience the weight of what felt like certain failure. Yet, within this abyss of despair, a glimmer of a solution began to emerge. Still seated on what should have been my bedroom floor, I aimlessly scrolled through rental listings on my phone, partly to torment myself with what could have been mine if I hadn't poured everything into this house. Partly because without a new source of income soon, the prospect of homelessness loomed large. My attention was captured by an ad for a cozy private room in a historic home. $500 a week for a bedroom in a renovated Victorian, with shared bathroom and kitchen access, utilities included. I stared at that ad for what felt like an eternity. Before the thought took full shape, I realized I owned a house with 3 bedrooms, but only needed one for myself. The front bedroom was closest to completion, requiring mostly cosmetic touches rather than major structural fixes. If I could ready that room to be rentable, I might generate some income while continuing renovations on the rest of the house. The next morning, I delved into Asheville's short-term rental laws and permit processes, relieved to find that my property's zoning permitted such use with some straightforward paperwork. With newfound determination, I funneled all my remaining resources and energy into making the front bedroom and shared bathroom presentable. When Ben heard about my job loss and new plan, he generously offered leftover paint and flooring materials from previous projects. Mr. Lin lent a hand by installing a programmable keypad lock on the front door for future guests. Liam, the teenager from next door, spent a weekend helping me clean and prepare the room in exchange for some math tutoring for his upcoming SATs. Within 2 weeks of my late-night revelation, I had transformed the front bedroom into an inviting space. The walls were freshly painted in a warm cream, the original hardwood floors refinished, and a lovingly restored built-in bookcase stood proudly. I pieced together simple yet charming furnishings from thrift stores and neighborhood giveaways. I crafted a listing that was honest and inviting. Private room in a 1920s cottage, lovingly undergoing restoration. Experience Asheville's historic architecture in transition. Comfortable, clean, private bedroom in a home still under renovation. Ideal for the adventurous traveler who values character over luxury. Shared bathroom, access to a simple kitchen. Friendly owner on site, eager to share renovation stories and local tips. I set the price and held my breath. Setting the price deliberately low at $40 per night and offering discounts for weekly or monthly stays, I hoped for the best. Within 3 days, I received an inquiry. Clara, a traveling nurse, required a place to stay for a 6-week contract at a nearby hospital, starting right away. The monthly rate I proposed was far below what she would pay elsewhere, and since she worked long hours as a healthcare professional, I would have ample opportunity to work on the house without bothering her. It seemed almost too good to be true, sparking anxiety that once she witnessed the ongoing construction, she might ask for a refund and leave negative reviews that could end my rental venture before it even began. However, when Clara arrived, she assessed the place with a clinical eye and declared her room perfectly adequate. She not only became a dependable tenant, but also an unexpected collaborator. Over coffee on her first weekend, she disclosed, "I was raised in a family of contractors. If you ever need help with basic electrical tasks, I'm your person." The steady, albeit modest income from Clara's stay provided enough financial relief to continue essential repairs and sustain my job hunt. Through Clara's hospital network, I met a real estate agent specializing in medical facility properties who needed someone to take listing photos. "I usually hire professionals," she noted, "but my regular photographer is booked solid for the next 2 months, and I have listings that can't wait." My marketing background included basic photography skills, and with guidance from YouTube tutorials and practice, I produced images that met her needs. What started as a one-off job turned into a regular side gig, offering additional income while giving me the flexibility to continue house repairs and attend job interviews. In an unexpected stroke of luck, a local blog dedicated to Asheville neighborhood revitalization discovered my project through community connections and requested an interview about grassroots urban renewal. The feature, titled "Asheville's Youngest Urban Homesteader Breathes New Life into an Abandoned Historic Property," showcased before-in-progress photos of the house and quoted Mrs. Thompson about how my efforts were reviving pride on the block. The publicity stirred interest in my short-term rental, creating a waitlist of potential guests for when Clara's stay ended, and also led to partnerships with local salvage companies willing to offer discounted materials in return for mentions in future articles. As December wore on, the absence of family became more poignant despite my improving situation. Christmas decorations adorned neighborhood windows, holiday tunes filled stores, and conversations everywhere revolved around family gatherings and traditions. I had resigned myself to spending the holiday alone when Mr. Lin appeared at my door on Christmas Eve. "My family is gathering tonight," he stated plainly. "Too many people, too much food. You will join us." His tone left no room for refusal, more a directive than an invitation. That evening, amid the warmth and chaos of 3 generations of the Lin family, I felt a sense of belonging I had never experienced with my own biological family. There were no expectations for me to be anything other than myself. Both of us were attempting to navigate the unfamiliar landscape of our estrangement. As he moved through the house, his eyes widened in visible surprise at the transformation. "This isn't what I envisioned," he confessed, running his hand along the original banister that had been meticulously restored. "When you described your plans, I couldn't picture this." We settled in the partially renovated kitchen, where I offered him coffee while waiting to uncover the real reason for his visit. "Your mother and I," he started, then paused to clear his throat. "We haven't treated you fairly." His admission lingered heavily in the air between us. "The situation with the retreat and your decision to buy this house, we mishandled it. But there were things you were unaware of." He began to unveil what I had long suspected. Their financial situation was far worse than they had let on, with mounting credit card debt to maintain appearances and support Sophie's various undertakings, second and third mortgages on their home, and retirement accounts repeatedly drained for emergencies often linked to Sophie's abandoned ventures. "We thought the retreat would be different," he explained, "that she'd finally discovered her path. We couldn't deny her, not again, but we couldn't afford it either." "When you announced you'd invested money in this house," he gestured around us, "it felt like you were intentionally undermining her chance, choosing this dilapidated property over your sister's future." I let him speak, years of family dynamics unraveling as he gradually acknowledged the pattern of expectations placed on me versus those on Sophie. We justified it by telling ourselves you were the strong one, the capable one. She needed more support. But that wasn't fair to you, and I see that now. He reached for my hand across the table. I'm proud of what you've accomplished here, Emma. You saw potential where we only saw problems, and you made it real through sheer determination. That's remarkable. The reconciliation was incomplete. My mother remained unwilling to visit, her pride still an insurmountable barrier, but it was a beginning. My father promised to keep working on her, and in the meantime, we established a tentative new relationship based on phone calls and occasional dinners at neutral locations. 3 weeks after my father's visit, Sophie appeared on my doorstep unannounced, her expression a complex mix of defiance and uncertainty. Unlike our father's cautious approval, Sophie's initial reaction to the house was dismissive. "So, this is what you chose over my career," she remarked, eyeing the kitchen renovation with exaggerated indifference. The conversation that ensued was painful but necessary. Years of unspoken resentment and rivalry finally voiced. "You've always been the favorite," she accused. "The perfect daughter with the perfect grades and the perfect job." I laughed without humor. "And you've always been the one whose dreams matter, whose desires come first, whose failures are merely stepping stones to the next opportunity. Everyone rushes to fund." The argument escalated, then gradually transformed into something more honest as exhaustion replaced anger. For perhaps the first time, we spoke to each other as adults, rather than as competitors vying for parental approval. "I was envious of your certainty," Sophie admitted finally. "You always seemed to know exactly what you wanted and how to achieve it. I'm still trying to figure out who I am." By the time she left, something fundamental had shifted between us. No secret scorekeeping, no fluctuating criteria, no race for attention or validation. Mrs. Lin insisted I take more servings, offering second and third portions. Their children eagerly shared their holiday presents with me, showing a genuine excitement that was infectious. Mr. Lin beamed as he introduced me to his relatives, saying I was the neighbor breathing new life into the Thompson house. When I finally returned to my own home late that evening, it no longer symbolized familial rejection. Instead, it felt like the dawn of a fresh beginning. A novel connection with people who appreciated my efforts without demanding conformity to their standards. For the first time, I could see a future where the renovation's completion wasn't merely a justification of my choices, but an authentic accomplishment to be celebrated in its own right. Half a year after the auction, the transformation of both the house and my life had surpassed even my most hopeful expectations. The exterior renovation was almost done, with a new roof, repaired siding, a lively sage green paint job, a restored front porch adorned with period-appropriate details, and simple landscaping that reclaimed the yard from years of neglect. Inside, 2 bedrooms were fully renovated and consistently rented through my now well-reviewed short-term rental listing, providing a steady income that funded further work on the remaining areas. My job situation had stabilized as well. After 3 months of temporary jobs and freelance gigs, I landed a marketing coordinator role at a local firm focused on sustainability. It was a lateral move in terms of title, but offered better pay and a company culture that valued work-life balance, allowing me to keep up with my renovation schedule. My side business of photographing real estate listings had grown enough to provide significant additional income, with regular clients referring others and even requests to photograph commercial properties. The local newspaper featured an article on neighborhood revitalization efforts, prominently showcasing before and after photos of my house, along with quotes from neighbors about the positive ripple effect of my renovation, inspiring other improvement projects on the street. While I enjoyed the validation this public recognition brought, the ongoing silence from my family cast a shadow over these successes. Sophie had returned from her retreat 3 months earlier with a yoga teacher certification. yet she found no immediate career prospects in the competitive Asheville wellness market. Through the neighborhood grapevine, I learned she had temporarily moved back into our parents' home while exploring her options. Financial difficulties within my family were becoming increasingly apparent to their social circle, with my parents quietly listing their boat for sale and my mother returning to part-time work at her former accounting firm after years of retirement. I kept sporadic contact with Uncle Tom, who occasionally provided these updates while respecting my parents' boundaries. The fragile balance shattered unexpectedly on a Saturday afternoon in June, nearly 7 months after the confrontation. I was staining newly installed kitchen cabinets when a knock at the door revealed my father standing on the porch, newspaper tucked under his arm, his expression unreadable. "I saw the article," he finally said after a moment of heavy silence, holding up the newspaper featuring my house. "May I come in?" The conversation that ensued was initially awkward and cautious. Not exactly forgiveness, not yet at least, but a mutual understanding began to form. We started to see the challenges each of us faced, the roles we had been assigned in the ongoing saga of our family. There was a glimmer of hope that one day we might forge a relationship independent of our parents' expectations. As she stood at the entrance, she remarked on the beauty of the house. It was the first sincere compliment she had ever given. "Maybe you could assist me in choosing a color for my room at Mom and Dad's," she suggested, hinting at an unexpectedly extended stay. It was a modest gesture of peace, but I appreciated the effort behind it. "I'd enjoy that," I answered sincerely, despite the lingering pain. Healing family wounds, like renovating the house, was a lengthy journey of addressing deep-rooted issues rather than superficial ones, with progress marked by small victories rather than sweeping changes. There were setbacks, like a particularly tense family dinner that ended in another argument, and weeks of silence following careless remarks. Yet the overall direction was towards rebuilding, albeit slowly. When my mother finally visited the house, nearly 9 months after our confrontation, her emotions were a complex mix. Her pride kept her from openly acknowledging my success, but I noticed her moments of genuine surprise and reluctant admiration as she observed the original features I had meticulously restored, the clever storage solutions, and the overall transformation. "From neglect to beauty," she admitted, echoing my father's words, the closest she could come to approval. It wasn't the wholehearted validation I once yearned for, but I was surprised to find it was enough, her opinion no longer the sole measure of my decision's worth. On the 1-year anniversary of the auction, I hosted a gathering that symbolized how much my life had altered. The backyard, once an overgrown tangle of weeds and debris, had become a simple yet welcoming garden. A wooden deck made from reclaimed materials, strings of lights above, and pots of herbs filled the air with their scent. Around the large salvage table gathered an unexpected family of choice: Mia and her boyfriend, the Lynns, Mrs. Thompson, Ben and his wife, Clara, the traveling nurse who had become a friend between her assignments, and a rotating group of former short-term guests who stayed in touch. The house itself stood as a testament to what vision and perseverance could achieve. The final touches were completed the previous week. Vintage-style light fixtures adorned the hallway. The last room was painted, and period-appropriate house numbers were affixed to the freshly painted front door. What had once been an eyesore in the neighborhood was now frequently photographed by architecture enthusiasts and featured in a local historic homes publication. The transformation inspired others on the block. 3 other properties had seen significant improvements in the months since I started, creating a noticeable ripple effect of community pride. My professional life had stabilized into something more fulfilling than what I had left behind. The marketing coordinator role evolved to include community outreach, allowing me to use my renovation experience to help the sustainability firm connect with local revitalization efforts. My side business of photographing real estate had expanded sufficiently, necessitating occasional outsourcing when my schedule couldn't handle all the demands. The most noteworthy development was my blog, which chronicled my renovation experiences and attracted a small but dedicated audience of novice homebuyers eager to navigate challenging markets using similar strategies. The most surprising event occurred 6 weeks before the anniversary, when my mother visited for her monthly review of my latest improvements. Instead of her usual blend of gentle approval and subtle hints for changes, she brought a housewarming gift. A quilt she had crafted herself, inspired by the stained glass window I had restored in the entryway. "I thought it might look nice in the master bedroom," she mentioned, avoiding direct eye contact. "The colors match what you've done in there." This gesture symbolized months of effort, both in the quilt's creation and in the emotional journey toward genuine acceptance. Although our relationship remained complex, the lifelong patterns were not easily altered. Yet we were learning to understand each other as adults beyond the confines of family roles. Sophie's path to comprehension had advanced more swiftly, perhaps due to her own post-retreat challenges fostering unexpected empathy. After 3 unsuccessful attempts to launch yoga classes at local studios, Sophie found herself facing the kind of persistent rejection I had experienced for years in the housing market. "I never understood before how hard it is to keep trying when nothing seems to work out," she confessed during one of our now frequent coffee meetings. "You just kept going with this house, even when it seemed impossible." Her growing respect for my perseverance gradually evolved into a genuine interest in the renovation process itself. To my astonishment, Sophie discovered a talent for design, noticing elements I often overlooked, her artistic perspective complementing my more pragmatic approach. Recently, she started bringing lunch to the house on Saturdays to assist with whichever project was underway, as our childhood rivalry slowly transformed into an appreciation of our distinct strengths. My father became an unexpected ally, his engineering expertise proving invaluable when complex structural issues arose. Although he never directly apologized for his initial rejection, his consistent presence and willingness to spend weekends assisting with projects spoke louder than words. "Your grandfather would be proud," he remarked once while helping install new water pipes. "He always said you could judge a person's character by how they handle tools and problems. You handle both pretty damn well." The anniversary dinner marked the culmination of a year's work on both the house and my understanding of what truly mattered. As we shared food and stories under the evening sky, I realized the house had provided more than just physical shelter. It had been the catalyst for breaking dysfunctional patterns, discovering capabilities I never knew I had, and building authentic connections based on mutual respect rather than obligation. When the conversation naturally shifted to my renovation journey, I found myself saying, the biggest restoration wasn't the house, it was me. I had to dismantle years of trying to be what everyone else needed and rebuild based on my own foundation. The nods of agreement around the table showcased the genuine community spirit that had developed through shared experiences and mutual aid, a stark contrast to the carefully curated facade of my family life. As the night wore on and the guests took their leave, I found solace sitting alone on the front porch swing I had installed just a month prior, gazing at the home I had painstakingly built. Through relentless perseverance and countless hours of hard work, the house stood as a testament to the idea that sometimes the most overlooked choices held the greatest promise. It proved that value could exist beyond what others could easily perceive, and that true transformation demanded both vision and the grit to engage in challenging, often unrecognized labor every single day. Perhaps more importantly, I discovered that real strength lay not in conforming to others' expectations or sacrificing my desires for the sake of harmony, but in the bravery to define success on my own terms and the resilience to chase it despite resistance. When my phone buzzed with a message from my mother, simply stating, "The dinner was wonderful. Your dad and I are proud of you." I couldn't help but smile at the progress we had all made. The journey had defied all our expectations, yet the final destination justified every painful step we had taken. Have you ever faced a choice between fulfilling others' expectations and following your own dreams? Did you tread the path laid out for you by others? Or did you dare to create something that was truly your own? I would be thrilled to hear your stories in the comments below. If this narrative of turning rejection into victory resonated with you, please click that subscribe button and share this video with someone who might need a little encouragement to pursue their own path, even when it seems daunting. Thank you for being a part of this remarkable year of transformation with me. Your support is more valuable than you can imagine.